Our first guest tonight is coming to us via satellite from Manchester, New Hampshire, more specifically from the Hilton Garden Inn. That's opposed to the Garden State, of which he is the governor. Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey. Governor, thanks for making time for us off the campaign trail. And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Saudi Arabia and
you guys.
Thanks. Saudi Arabia, the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran is much in the news. I want to ask you about Saudi Arabia, which is a big topic for any president. How would you evaluate their human rights record over the last 5 years?
Well, listen, I think their human rights record leaves something to be desired. The fact is that we have to work with them and other allies of ours to continue to express our concerns about things that happen in their country regarding human rights. But it should not be the dominant factor in terms of what we talk about. We have even larger issues to deal with Saudi Arabia. The conduct of the war in Yemen, how that's going to impact their ability to help in the fight against ISIS, how we deal with Syrian refugees, and other issues, including their breaking off of diplomatic with Iran. All those things are going to be factors that the next president is going to have to take into consideration as we continue to try to improve and enhance our relationship with the Saudi government.
When you say leaves something to be desired, what are the specific practices of the Saudi government that you would characterize that way?
Listen, Mark, I think generally what we find is that the treatment of women is not exactly what we would say here in the United States is what's acceptable. And there are other examples as well, but there's no reason to go through a laundry list of those things today. The fact is that we need to work with our friends to make sure that we're trying to have a positive influence on their human rights records inside their own country while not letting that dominate the geopolitical relationship we need to have with the Saudi government.
Governor, you like a lot of your Republican rivals are a relatively large critic of the Iranian regime, the current one. But do you feel any sympathy for the Iranian cause in this instance?
No, I don't.
No, you think in some sense that one would think, given the executions that there are, given the nature of the crime, that you would at least have some sympathy with the Iranians, just on the basis of the fact that the crime itself seems pretty egregious.
I have no sympathy for the Iranians.
On another quick question on Iran, if you were elected president, would you rip up the nuclear deal your first day in office, or something else?
I think that by the time I get to office in January of 2017, as is evidenced by the ballistic missile testing already, that agreement will be violated multiple times, and it won't be worth the paper it's written on anyway, and we're going to have to start over.
Governor Christie, let me ask you, there's been a lot of discussion. We're discussing guns a lot right now in the context of President Obama's executive actions, or executive actions that seem to be on deck. I want to ask you about your record on assault weapons. You've described it in the past as having evolved over time. Can you explain that evolution and how that took place?
Sure. I think, original positions that I took back well over 20 years ago have been influenced greatly by my time as a prosecutor. And during that time, what I became focused on was dealing with criminals with guns and making sure that we spend the focus of our effort on getting criminals off the streets who are using guns. And we used that very effectively when I was U.S. Attorney with the felons in possession law to be able to take criminals off the street for minimum sentences of at least 5 years on a first offense. Those are the kind of things we need to focus on to lower violence across our urban and suburban areas in this country. We don't need to be worrying about creating new laws to try to take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, and that's how I've evolved over time.
In 2009,
very influenced by my time as a prosecutor.
In 2009, you told Sean Hannity that you were moderate to left on gun control measures. Is that still true?
No, I don't think it is. And I don't, listen, I think at the time, I don't know who I was comparing myself to. But the fact is that my record in New Jersey is very clear. Since I've been governor of New Jersey, I've vetoed the 50 caliber rifle ban. I've vetoed the reduction of magazine limits from 15 to 10. I've vetoed a statewide registration system. And I've pardoned 6 out-of-state folks who were arrested in New Jersey for having legally owned a handgun someplace else and having carried it through New Jersey. I think that's wrong, and I've pardoned those people. So my record on the gun issue in New Jersey during my time as governor, I think, has been very clear right from the beginning. The first one of those pardons happening in 2010.
Right.
So it's been something I've been pretty firm on since I've been governor.
Before the veto that you just talked about, your office put out a press release that touted New Jersey's record on gun control and promoted banning the future sale of a specific type of assault rifle. How does that square with your general posture on the issue?
It absolutely squares with it. The fact is that I've taken the steps that I think are necessary to protect Second Amendment rights in New Jersey, as I've been permitted to by the legislature, and also to make sure that the public safety of the people of New Jersey are protected.
Governor, another topic in the news, protesters armed in Oregon who've taken this government compound, government building. What would your message to those individuals be today?
Listen, there has to be a peaceful resolution to this issue. The fact is that the balance you try to reach in situations like this, whether you're in law enforcement or whether you're the governor of a state, is to let folks know that the law has to be enforced and has to be followed. But you also want to try to do so without the loss of any life. And so there should be intense discussions and negotiations and listening amongst both sides of this dispute right now to try to reach a peaceful resolution. That's what I try to do as governor, and I think that's what most responsible people would try to do as well. But they have to know that in the end, the law needs to be respected and enforced.
Okay, Governor, thanks. Stand by. We'll be back with more with Governor Christie right after this.
We are back with Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who is up in Manchester, New Hampshire right now. And speaking of New Hampshire, Governor, you're not doing too bad up there in the polls these days. Let me ask you this question as you run for the Republican nomination. If you can come up with name an issue for us where you are out of step with the conservative base of the Republican Party.
I don't think I am out of step with the conservative base of the Republican Party.
On not one issue. I'm asking you for.
No, listen. I don't know what you're looking for here, but no, I'm not going to sit here and go through a laundry list of things where you might think or someone else might think that I'm out of step with the base of the Republican Party. I'm a conservative Republican. I've been a conservative Republican all my whole life, and I don't feel out of step with the base of my party.
Governor, I think I guess the way I'd frame the question is this: if you look back on past presidential nominees of both parties, whether it's Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, the Democratic Party, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, in each instance, in some point in their campaign, there was an issue where they challenged the orthodoxy in their party, even though they were largely in step with their party's base. I'm just curious, issue where you feel like the conservative base is wrong, and you not feel like you're out of step, but where you'd like to say, hey, I'm in line with the party on most things, but on this thing, I think the base of my party is just simply wrong, and I'm taking an unorthodox position.
Well, I don't know. You're kind of looking for some Sister Souljah moment, which I think are manufactured and political things. I will tell you that, I've tried to lead the way in New Jersey against all orthodoxy, Republican and Democrat, on the issue of drug addiction. And the fact is that we do not any longer need to be jailing first-time, non-violent, non-dealing drug offenders. And we don't do that in New Jersey anymore. We send them to mandatory drug treatment. And I think we need to get away from incarceration as the solution for non-violent, non-dealing drug offenders. And I've been a solid, strong voice on that. I think that both Democrats and Republicans have disagreed with me at times on this. But the fact is we need to put families back together. We need to make society more productive. And getting people treatment for addiction, which I believe is a disease that needs to be treated, is something that I've stepped out front on very early on in my time as governor and continue to push for and enhance during my term as governor.
Governor, the First Lady of New Jersey, Mary Pat Christie, has campaigned actively in New Hampshire and elsewhere for you, putting her out in the public eye. I'm wondering what you think the standard should be for scrutiny of the positions, the financial relationships, the public statements of spouses in this race.
Well, listen, my wife's a big girl, and she understands that part of the package of being out here in public life is that she's going to be asked questions and she's going to be subject to scrutiny. That's why during my entire time as governor, we've released our tax returns, and we released 7 years of our tax returns before I became governor. So now you've got 12 years of tax returns out there on myself and my wife, and what it shows that my wife, every one of those 12 years, has made more money than me. So she's ready to be scrutinized about out-earning her husband every year for 12 years in a row whenever you want to ask her the question.
I want to make this not about your wife necessarily, but just the general sense of spouses. As you know, Donald Trump's been very critical of Bill Clinton, for instance. I'm just wondering if you think any spouse or a spouse who's campaigning is fair game, anything from their past, or is there a different line that you think society and the media should draw and politicians should draw for each other, for spouses as opposed to candidates?
Listen, I think you have to judge that individual by individual and circumstance by circumstance. And so, you know, from my perspective, I think that's got to be judged on a case-by-case basis. I can only speak from our perspective that we've been used to getting scrutiny. Mary Pat's been used to getting scrutiny from the media in the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area. And, you know, we'll be used to getting scrutiny as our role enhances here to become the Republican nominee.
So let me just finish this line by asking you about a specific person. Is like the line of criticism and personal nature of what Donald Trump is saying about Bill Clinton's past now, is that, as far as you're concerned, fair game? Is that the kind of thing you might bring up in the context of running against Hillary Clinton?
I just think there's so many other problems that are currently existing in our country and opportunities for to take advantage of. I don't know by relitigating Bill Clinton's personal life that's something that's the most productive expenditure of time for the American people and for moving our country forward. And so that would not be something that I'm all that interested in. But every candidate's got to make their own judgment and then be ready for the scrutiny that comes back at them for the judgments that they make.
Governor, let me ask you about the speech you gave today up in New Hampshire. There was one phrase that jumped off the page to my eye, and that was the phrase carnival barkers, the carnival barkers of today. What was in your head when those words came out of your mouth? Who are you thinking of?
Listen, I'm thinking of a number of people, both, you know, who are running for president and who are commenting on this race for president as members of Congress and others who only care more about telling people what they think they want to hear rather than what they really need to know.
So, Governor, why don't you tell me who it is you're thinking?
There's any number of people who could fit.
Who are you thinking of there among people who are running for president?
If I wanted to name names, if I wanted to name names during the speech, I certainly would have.
Well, I'm just asking, give me a little chance to elaborate. You can tell it like it is right here.
Listen, I'm sure, and I did. I told it like it was today in the speech. And I think that anybody who has any trouble understanding that is someone who hasn't been observing the race closely.
Governor, it's being reported by National Review that Marco Rubio is going to go on with 2 ads against you in New Hampshire starting tomorrow. I wish I had more details for you on that, but let me just ask you, what do you make of that development and of the coming negative ads, presumably against you and others in this fight in the last month?
Well, I guess I just wonder what happened to the Marco who so indignantly looked at Jeb Bush and said, I guess someone must have convinced you that going negative against me helps you. I guess that same person must now have convinced Marco that going negative against Chris Christie is what he needs to do. The fact is, listen, I stand by my record as governor of New Jersey. It's a good one. We just had the greatest private sector job growth year New Jersey has had in 15 years.
Governor,
we have nearly cut unemployment in half.
I'm sorry.
Let me just finish this. Yeah. I think this is really important that, you know, if Senator Rubio would just show up for work every once in a while, he's only got one job. He's got to cast votes in the United States Senate. If he thinks that's a worthless job, which he has basically said before, he should resign it. If he doesn't, then he should show up and go and vote. I work every day for the people of New Jersey as governor. Happy to have this conversation with Senator Rubio.
I want to be clear, it's the super PAC supporting Senator Rubio, not the campaign itself. I know that distinction will not mean much to some people. Okay. Governor Christie, thank you.
All right.
More to me, quite frankly.
All right, Chris Christie up in Manchester again. Thanks from both of us.